everybody. Welcome to the Golden Nugget Podcast. Woo! So today is our 8th episode, and we have our guest here with us today, Laura Gruff. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We appreciate you being here. My name is Deanna Golden. I am the CEO and founder of The Path to Recover.
And I'm Stephanie Brown, the co-host.
Yeah, and today we are going to be diving into a little bit of Laura's story, kind of talking about a little bit more of her journey being a mom and, kind of what that looks like and her getting to that piece. So, hi, Laura. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for
Excited
having me.
that you're here. Yeah. So let's start out first by kind of diving into your story. Stephanie, I think you had a question.
Yeah. So in the last one that we did, we were talking a little bit about how a lot of people think that trauma has to be what initiates somebody's drinking or what kind of gets them started down that path to alcoholism. So wanted to hear a little bit more about your story and what happened for you. What kind of drove you to that path?
Well, yeah, I mean, I hear all the time all sorts of trauma, DUIs, losing your children, jail time, and none of that ever happened to me. I was blessed. I was a, goody-goody to my family.
Yeah.
I had my first drink when I was around 14 years old, and my body instantly had a reaction, throwing up. I drank too much, but it was fun.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then from then on, what I feel that is unique is that I drank pretty normally. I mean, in high school, on the weekends, but it was never a necessity. And in college, I was not a party girl. I did go to parties and I did drink, but I was not dependent on it. It sped up a little in my 20s, and all the while I'm still able to pay bills and pay for alcohol because it's not cheap, but
No.
I fast forward to basically I'm working at a toxic environment, and I also started buying gin, which was my liquor of choice. And I don't know why it was, but it used to taste good as a gin tonic with lime, and then it tasted really good just by itself out of the bottle.
How fast did it take you to kind of get to that spot of like just drinking it straight, you think?
When you feel the burn go down your throat, and then you instantly just something clicks in your mind, it could make a headache disappear. It could make a sinus infection better. It could make me want to go out and run 3 miles.
Wow, you exercise?
I mean, but just it was magic.
Yeah.
And until it wasn't.
Yeah. Well, and what you're really saying is that it worked for all of those things that really bothered you or, kind of made you feel abnormal. It made you back to that normal spot. Because that's what I always like to say is like, I thought everybody was up here and I was down here. And when I drank, I got up here level with everybody else.
Yes. It made me feel more confident.
Yeah.
Like I could speak in a crowd or among, friends or family. I've some family who they're at a different financial status than me, but just feeling like I could be one of them.
Yeah.
And I felt like I could dress myself better. I mean, everything. It was just, and all the while I started to rack up debt as I was, it was starting to add up.
Yeah. So you're having some consequences.
I was having some consequences that were showing up. So I didn't have any, major trauma as a child. But the consequences I did have that came up were losing 3 jobs and knowing that I had, $5,000 plus debt on a credit card that I really didn't know how or when that would ever get paid for.
And was the majority of that debt spent on alcohol, or was it just really
probably alcohol and apparel?
Yeah.
Because if I'd get drunk, sometimes I'd go, shopping.
Yeah, absolutely.
And back then there wasn't Amazon, thank God, right?
No, I went to into a store and what did alcohol also do for me? Made me super charming. So people
Yeah.
thought that I was just this fun, friendly, like overly happy person. But little did they know I was 3 sheets to the wind. Or I had a water bottle full of alcohol in my purse.
Well, it's interesting that you say apparel too, because, alcohol isn't the only thing that we use to try to fill that void, right? For me, I call it the not good enough, not smart enough, not pretty enough black hole, and I did the same thing. Like, I wanted to shop and dress really nice and do my hair and do my makeup and have my nails, and I still do that, but I'm not doing it to fill that void. Back then, I was obsessively doing it to fill that void, thinking if I could feel better on the outside, I would feel better on the inside.
Yes. I also spent a lot of money going to the dry bar to get hair blowouts for anything that I was invited to, because I didn't feel that I could do it, or I maybe didn't have the energy to. And so yes, it was whatever I could do, but as long as I had my secret alcohol with me, I felt happy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So you lost those 3 jobs kind of consecutively in a row. It's easy, I think, for our family and friends to kind of look at those type of situations and go, well, you should have known you had a problem. When did you really figure out, hey, I don't think I have a problem with this alcohol?
So yes, I lost those 3 jobs, and I was just living at my boyfriend's house, pretending to be searching for a job.
Yeah, anywhere.
And I wasn't. I told him eventually that I was having alcohol delivered to the house. I can't remember what
did that.
Yeah.
the app.
Oh my goodness.
There was an app that you could have it delivered, and I would unplug the cameras and have it delivered, because you could put it on a credit card.
I would pause my Ring camera, so that no one would see it come to the door.
I did the exact same thing. And he also had a roommate, but he was a waiter, and so I usually tried to time it if he was still asleep, because it's awkward. It's like what I'm grabbing from the door wasn't like a box of food; it was a brown bag and a handle, But
that's probably not food.
Yeah.
My body started to show signs. I was bruising a lot. I guess my blood was thinning.
Right.
Stomach issues, bruising, shaking. So I feel like I was kind of starting to shut down a little bit. I was also taking Vyvanse. Okay. So that was helping me function. That was the other thing that I was charging, because it wasn't cheap.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is Vyvanse? It's just kind of like a mood enhancer.
It's basically like a time release Adderall. So it's not so like Adderall can be like almost straight cocaine.
Yeah.
Okay.
If depending on how you take it,
if you're
how much you take
it.
Vyvanse, it's a time release.
So it kind of would keep you up so that you could drink more, essentially. Gotcha.
Or just give me a little bit more cognitive thinking because it does keep your brain going. So that if I was drunk, I could still make sense to the people in my life, and I could still manipulate. Wasn't trying to manipulate them, but I was.
Yeah. So were you like aware that you were taking it for that reason, or was it something that was kind of prescribed to you, and you were like, oh, well, this helps a lot, I can drink more now?
I think no, it was prescribed to me because I wanted more energy. I didn't want to eat much. And I knew it helped with that.
Okay.
I kind of talked my way through getting the prescription.
Gotcha.
And I consistently kept it. I wasn't using it to drink more. I was using it because I didn't know how to live without it either.
Gotcha. So it's another thing, just like the apparel, that again you're trying to fix the internal condition with something external.
It was almost instantly when I wouldn't have it or I was running low on it, I would get so anxious and also would get like really bad headaches.
Okay.
And so I knew that I don't want this to happen.
Yeah.
But I wasn't, the hardest part is I didn't have anyone to tell any of this to.
You weren't talking to anyone about it?
No.
Okay.
All to myself. And so you're just kind of like, I don't know, lying.
Yeah.
Doing a lot of lying and
hiding probably.
So that was starting to get exhausting. Getting back to the question, I basically decided to not drink one night. And I was like, I think I didn't have any on hand and it was too late to go to the liquor store. So I waited until noon the next day and I was on the phone with my boyfriend and I dropped the phone, fell off. I had a seizure. My head hit the bedside table, busted my ear open. His roommate was home, heard me, called 911.
Thank God, yeah.
They took me to the hospital. There somehow was no alcohol in my system.
Wow.
I know.
Because you hadn't drank in 24 hours maybe?
Maybe. But I was very surprised at that. Yeah. My half-sister showed up at the hospital and my boyfriend was able to talk to her and say, there's been some other things that have happened. And, I found a handle of gin under the bathroom counter with no lid on it, no governor's top.
Yeah, and we don't need that. That just hinders you.
And he's like, I think we've got another problem going on.
Yeah.
But after I left the hospital, the only thing I wanted to do was drink.
Yeah.
And then it was probably about a month later that I realized I'd gone on a trip. My half siblings did a intervention of sorts, which I lied. And then I went on a trip and got really drunk. And that night, my sister asked me what was wrong. And I started crying and I said, I think I'm an alcoholic. And it was the first time I was able to say it out loud because I'd finally hit my rock bottom.
Yeah.
I mean, I was so exhausted keeping it to myself. And she gave me a hug and she said, I know. And I just bawled. And it was just so freeing, but also so scary because I knew things were about to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
and being that in that position, like I remember those times in my life when I had those aha moments where I was just like, I'm done with this. Because you said it earlier and alluded to the fact that it became not a luxury, now it's a necessity. Like I have to drink, like I just have to. And heart attack, seizure, DTs, hallucinations, things like that. I mean, that stuff happens after we've been drinking for a while.
I remember I used to think that was not true. Like that.
You didn't think it was?
Yeah, I didn't think you could get audio visual hallucinations if you stopped drinking. That was a crazy lie. They told you so you wouldn't drink. And then I had them.
Yeah.
And they are true.
You're like, oh, that is true. Yeah. Well, the truth is like we're poisoning our bodies. Right? Alcohol is officially a poison, right? And the more poison that I put into my body, like the reason why I get drunk is because my body can't process it fast as I'm drinking it. And with us, especially alcoholics, like we're drinking it so fast because we have that body that just says more. You gotta have more, you gotta have more, you gotta have more. And it's so scary to be in that spot and not really know like what's going to happen. So after you got to that moment with your sister and you just really knew like, okay, I'm done. What happened after that?
After that, we were in Rockport, Texas, and then we drove, I think 5 hours to get home. And I was pretty shaky. And I still had a little bit of alcohol like in my luggage, and whenever they'd get out of the car to get gas, I would try if I could to like get a sip, and I was still nervous about talking about it because I didn't know what was going on. I mean, I was realizing there's a chance I could have another seizure. We got home and I was presented with an option of 2 different rehabs to attend. And I basically just picked a location that sounded nice. And I went for 45 days, and it was a rehab where I was able to get medicine in case I were to have another seizure.
Gotcha. It was a medical detox.
It was a medical detox, and it was advised to my family members to make sure I drank all the way up until I got to the door, or the risk of a seizure happening. And so I did 45 days, and while I was there, I I got pretty serious once my head cleared.
Yeah, you're so foggy when you're
It's
first like getting off of it.
You're so foggy, and you're also not eating right or
Yeah.
real food or drinking water.
Or sleeping.
I don't know when I was drinking water, you know?
Yeah.
Yes, not sleeping because of the Vyvanse and
Yeah.
alcohol. Like, my sleeping was way off.
Yeah.
I got back to Dallas and immediately hooked up with a mentor who encouraged me to get into the rooms of recovery.
Yeah.
And I instantly felt just people to relate to.
Yeah.
Because I was hearing stories from other women and men that sounded parallel to mine.
Yeah.
With their own little flair. But they looked happy and beautiful and nice, and life was great. And I have kept going.
Yeah. And you wanted that desperately in that moment.
I was very desperate. And when I got back and realized how fortunate I was, even some of the women at the rehab, I couldn't. What they were going through or what they had experienced was way worse than my story. But yet we were at the same place.
Yeah. Well, I think that's super hard too, is like, you know, I was a young alcoholic. And so like coming into the recovery rooms, you know, at a very young age, like I felt like a lot of the external consequences I couldn't relate with either. You know, people were talking about divorce and people were talking about homelessness and, you know, all those things. Like I have a lot of jail in my story, unfortunately. You know, I'm just crazy when I drink. So I could relate with the DWIs and probationary consequences and stuff like that. But, you know, like all of those other consequences I couldn't really relate with. And so, like you said, it wasn't until I actually heard, like, okay, their drinking piece, like, once they started drinking, they couldn't stop. It was a necessity. And then when they stopped, how their mind would always lead them back to it every single time. That's what I could relate with. And just like you, like, I felt so much hope in that because I was like, oh my gosh, somebody understands me. Because I didn't feel like anybody understood me.
Yes.
I thought I was completely alone in this deal.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you get into the rooms of recovery. You're working with your mentor. Everything's going great. And what happened?
So my boyfriend stayed with me throughout all of it.
Oh, what a saint. Right?
Yeah.
Out of all of that, I love the people that stay with us.
We had a lot of, you know, trust stuff we had to work on. I moved back in with him, and he drinks.
Okay.
But he drinks, and he can pour it out when he's done. Or he drinks and just goes to bed and doesn't stay up all night.
Yeah.
With airplane bottles here and there throughout the house.
My husband has one beer at the end of the night, and he's like, I just want a beer. And I'm like, why? Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Just normal drinkers, right?
Normal. And so after a year of sobriety, about a month later, he proposed.
Aww.
A little bit of it, I think he wanted to make sure I was in it.
Yeah.
And that it was, that I was serious.
Yeah.
And so I worked hard that first year. I had numerous part-time jobs. I was in and out of the recovery rooms, working with a mentor.
Yeah.
And then fast forward 3 years, and then we get pregnant with our first child.
Yay.
And, you know, I had her, and it was amazing. One child, so I was able to get back. As a mom, you can't just leave your baby in the first few weeks.
Yeah.
And my mentor basically gave me some grace with that. And it was during COVID, so there was still a lot of recovery meetings that were online. But I didn't even start attending those or attending in person until about 8 to 10 weeks postpartum.
Okay.
And continued to, because I knew that if I don't, I could lose that daughter or lose that husband. And then now, this year in January, I had my second little girl.
Yay.
And that was a wake-up call because 2 kids felt like 20.
And especially little ones like that.
And you're sleep deprived because you've been with the toddler all day, but then you've got to be with the newborn all night.
Yeah.
Your attention's pulled.
Your attention is pulled. You have no idea, like, what groceries are in the house. Everything was just a lot. And it's just like motherhood. It's a lot. And I feel like there should be a shirt. And so then my mentor gave me some grace,
Yeah.
Just be with the baby, da-da-da. And so instead of 8 to 10 weeks, I didn't get back into the recovery room for 6 months.
Wow. Okay. That's a long time.
And during that time, probably about 4 to 5 months in, I think a mental relapse was occurring.
Yeah.
I was depressed, even though I had these wonderful children and this life where I could be at home and there was always groceries in the fridge.
Yeah.
But I was anxious. I was resentful. I was restless.
Yeah.
And I was pointing a lot of fingers at my husband.
Yeah.
So basically what ended up happening one night in June, I had no filter and I said things that just really broke his heart.
Oh.
And I had no place in saying those.
Right.
And I know it was because I was not thinking about recovery.
Well, you weren't in that emotional state.
No.
That's the thing is like when we get far enough away from the recovery rooms, what starts happening is we start getting into self, and thinking that, oh, I have to handle all this and I have to make sure he knows how I feel and I have to make sure everything's the right way. I know we were kind of talking before the podcast and you were saying I felt like I had to do everything on my own, but that's really something we just kind of created ourselves on our own mind.
I wasn't saying all the things that I needed or felt. I was just bottling it all up. Internalizing it. And then I think, yes, the next day I talked to my mentor and I immediately after her phone call got on my knees and talked to God. And because, the God piece, I've always had a really good relationship with him. And so I thought that would hold me, but I don't think that I was talking to him about the right things.
So you're talking about when you're out there drinking?
Yeah.
Yes. So you did have a good conception of God back then, but you weren't necessarily relying on him.
No.
Yeah, just having
We
faith.
weren't talking. Yeah, I had faith, but we weren't talking to him.
Yeah.
And, so after this occurrence, I asked God to just change me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just that. It was, what do I do next? And I immediately, I think a day later, went to the next recovery room that I could.
Yeah.
And I immediately felt better.
Yeah.
Because I was around my people. People who knew about the mental piece and the physical piece. And even though I didn't drink, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I didn't want to drink after I had this awful fight.
Yeah.
And so I'm blessed.
You recovered.
Yeah. But I still had that mental thing going.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like I feel like for me that a lot of people talk about relapses just being drinking or thinking about drinking or whatever, but there's that precipitation into before that thought what comes first, and that's that emotional relapse where I'm pulling away. And I'm sure in those few months that you're talking about there wasn't that connection with your mentor that there should have been.
Right.
There wasn't that, because we're talking about, I left the rooms and then the solution was to come back. That's a part of it, right? We got to be around our peeps. I got to be around people who understand me, who are speaking my language, but that's not the solution. What you just said is the solution. It's God.
It's God.
But how do I connect to that power that I need so desperately. And it's through doing all of those things that I know so well, which is talking to my mentor, communicating with my husband, setting those boundaries, making sure my side of the street's clean.
Yes.
All that stuff.
So I had a lot of cleaning of my side of the street to do. And I remember asking my husband, the words that I really got was, I just said, can you just hang in there for a little bit longer while I just get back to recovery?
Yeah.
And he said, okay.
Yeah.
And ever since then, it's been a weekly, daily practice for me.
Yeah. And that's, it's so cool, I think, how we know what the solution is. We get right back into it. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, why wasn't I doing this before?
Yeah, why did I stop?
And
why?
It's like, I'm no saint and I'm not cured, but I know each and every day I wake up and I'm thankful. Yeah. And even if I don't have a prayer, I acknowledge God. I always say when I walk outside, good morning, God.
Yeah.
If I don't say anything at all.
Yeah, for sure. Invite him in. I love that. Oh, thank you so much for being here, Laura.
Oh, thank you.
So I want to ask you one more thing. I want you to talk to our viewers right now, and I want you to tell them if you had one thing that you would really want to tell somebody watching this podcast right now, what would it be?
It seems so hard to be honest when you feel that all you've done is lie and steal and be dishonest about things that you're keeping inside of you and you're consuming. But the vulnerability piece is that people love you unconditionally, and they may not tell you that. So it is so worth it to give it a shot and seek help.
Mm-hmm.
Find a mentor and let recovery show you that it works. And you have to work hard, but you've got nothing to lose. Because if you continue how you are, in my case, I was going to lose everything. So if that's one thing to keep you going, just know that you could have it all or you could not have it all.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
if that helps.
Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you.
So as always, if y'all have any questions or comments, put them below in the notes. Like, share, and subscribe on our YouTube channel. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.